Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWAS College Football Week 6. We're on to Saturday. Week 5 was a good one. So hopefully we have back-to-back good weeks here. A lot of games on the board. You guys know the drill. I'm going to get to as many as I can. Let's get into it. I mean, is Cooper Rush worth 2.5 points? I would hope Quinn Ewers put up a decent stat line against Arizona State. If he didn't, we have a real problem.
You can say the same thing about Creighton. Okay, they had the one good game against Kansas at home.
When Toast talks about the kicking market, it's like some earth is flat shit. Andy, true or false, this is going to be a dog walking.
Dog walking. This is my dog walking of the day. I think it's going to be very ugly. Dog walking. I think this is going to be ugly.
Hey, get the sauce. Boston College, Pittsburgh. This one was sitting at 6.5. They raised limbs to 20K, and it looks like they got hit with some Pittsburgh money. It's up at a flat 7 now for Pitt. Boston College, Pittsburgh. Both these teams jump out to early leads last week. Pitt went up 17-0. Boston College went up 14-0. Both teams blow it. Pittsburgh ended up losing that game outright. They didn't even cover my plus 4.5 in that one. And Boston College ends up losing by 4 to Cal on a last-second touchdown drive to take the lead. So both these teams blow 2 touchdown leads at home last week. So both coming off heartbreakers. I got to say, I haven't lost any faith in the Pittsburgh defense. This is still a top 25 defensive front. They're 3rd in success rate per rush, 10th in PPA per rush. This is a top 25 run defense without a doubt, maybe even a top 10 run defense. They're truly that good against the run. And honestly, it's not on the Pitt defense last week. The Pitt defense played great. Pittsburgh turned the ball over 5 times. That's why they lost. The defense allowed under 4.7 yards per play, 40.5% success rate. The defense played well. They allowed 34 points because the offense turned the ball over 5 times. That's why Pitt lost to Louisville. We know Boston College is an offense that wants to throw the ball with Lonergan. And last week I was kind of gassing Lonergan up. I got to say, I swept that Stanford game under the rug because I was like, he didn't play that well against Stanford, but it was all the way on the other side of the country. It was a terrible spot for Boston College. I swept that game under the rug. But we just saw Lonergan struggle a little bit against Cal, and now that makes back-to-back games where, I mean, he hasn't been very good. A 61.4 QB rating from a clean pocket is not going to cut it. I mean, in an O'Brien offense that wants to throw the ball, he needs to be more efficient than that, and we know the run's not going to be there for Boston College. I know they actually racked up some decent rushing numbers against Cal last week, but this is not a great rushing offense. It wasn't a great rushing offense last year. Like I said, Pitt has an elite defensive front. So I very seriously doubt Lonergan's going to have run support in this game. The question for me here is, will Pittsburgh be getting their corners back? Lynham and Battle both missed the Louisville game. That's their 2 starting corners there at Pitt. They're both listed as questionable. From what I'm reading, it looks like they're definitely getting, I think, Battle back. They're definitely getting one of them back. One of them, I think, has been upgraded to probable. The other one, I'm not sure. He's still listed as questionable. So there's a chance Pittsburgh might be getting both their starting corners back. And we saw Miller Moss play okay. Again, the story of that Pittsburgh-Louisville game was the 5 Pittsburgh turnovers. It wasn't that Miller Moss did anything or Louisville offense did anything. It was Pitt's offense gifted them the football 5 times. So especially if Pitt gets these corners back, I think Boston College might struggle to move the football in this game. Now, on the other side of the ball, is Pittsburgh's offense capable of getting it together? 5 turnovers. To me, it's very obvious how badly Pittsburgh needs Desmond Reed back on the field. Desmond Reed's their superstar running back. He's missed the last 2 games, and it's been noticeable. In their first 2 games with Desmond Reed on the field, they averaged 53 points per game, over 7.5 yards per play. In their last 2 games without Desmond Reed, now Desmond Reed started I think he just left the West Virginia game early. No, actually, I don't think he played at all. But in their last 2 games without Desmond Reed, 25.5 points per game, success rate under 35%. Now, obviously, we have to mention that they played much tougher competition in the last 2. But it's very clear that Desmond Reed is an important part of this offense, and they need him back on the field. He's currently listed as questionable. So getting Desmond Reed back, huge for Pittsburgh if that's going to happen. Holstein has really struggled without having Desmond Reed in the backfield. In the last 2 games without him on the field, I mean, he's rattled. He's getting pressured. His QB rating sucks from a clean pocket. It sucks under pressure. Their teams are clearly blitzing him at a high rate. 52.6% blitz rate in the last 2 games. So without Desmond Reed, without the threat of Desmond Reed, the teams are not having problems shutting down Eli Holstein in this Pitt passing attack. So if Desmond Reed returns in this game for Pitt, I do think they're able to move the ball in Boston College. We saw Saga Politelli. There you go. Nailed it. Saga Politelli making throws on this Boston College defense last week. I rewatched this game, the Cal Boston College. I wouldn't say Saga Politelli was piecing them up. There was a lot of pass. I swear there was a pass interference call on Boston College at like every third or fourth play. There were so many flags on Boston College secondary in that one. And it was evident that they are missing their corners. I probably should have let off with this, by the way. Just like Pitt, the top two corners have been out for Boston College. But unlike Pittsburgh has a chance of getting both those corners back. These guys are not coming back. They've been ruled out for the Pittsburgh game. So Boston College is coming into this one missing their top two corners. Yeah, if Desmond Reed comes back, I think Pitt could get it going. And I like Pitt to win by a touchdown plus. So keep searching. If you see Desmond Reed confirmed, I don't know if you'll actually see it. But if Desmond Reed plays in this game, I think Pitt wins by a touchdown plus. So there's a 5.5 out there. Give me Pitt minus 5.5, but I don't have a bet on the game. I need to see Desmond Reed suited up playing, which it's college football, so we probably won't get that information, but it'll be Pitt for me. Ohio, Ball State. Looks like we finally saw some buyback on the Ohio side. Some of the softer books opened this at 17.5 for Ball State. Finally saw some Ohio money in at the flat 14. Looks like we're looking at 15 right now. Ohio on the road against Ball State. We're into MAC play. I bet this game, and I got a great number. So if you follow the MAC conference, you know that Ohio has one of the strongest offenses, right? With Parker Navarro, they're the reigning MAC champions. And, you look at a graphic like this and you're thinking, okay, Ohio's definitely going to move the ball and score points against Ball State's defense. And I'm not saying that's not true at all. But we've got a Ball State team. You got to keep in mind, this is a new era of Ball State football. Uremovich just took over the team. It's year one. And they seem to be improving as the year's rolling along. We've got Ball State coming off their best defensive game on the road against UConn, who has a very strong offense. UConn's offense, 31.8% success rate in the game. So Ball State's defense 2 weeks ago on the road against the best offense they've seen. Well, not the best offense they've seen, but their best defensive game against a strong UConn offense. They played pretty well. And Ball State was missing defensive starters in this game. Safety Michael Gravely Jr., edge Michael Wing, linebacker Caden Johnson, Jamad Harmon. All these guys missed that game for Ball State. And based on what I'm reading, most of those guys are going to be back. So not only did Ball State's defense just play the best game of their season, but they're actually going to be healthier coming off a bye to start MAC play against Ohio. I love it. I mean, again, this Ohio offense is really good. And I'm not saying Ball State's defense is going to shut this offense down at all. But Ball State's defense, we perceive Ball State to be one of the worst teams of the MAC. I think their defense is better than Bowling Green's defense. Last week against Bowling Green, this was at home. I mean, they won and they covered for me. I had Ohio last week against Bowling Green, but that was a sweat. I mean, they were moving the ball on Bowling Green. On the other side of the ball, it wasn't so great, and we'll get to that in a second. But we got Ohio, who just came off a game against Bowling Green, immediately traveled to Ball State to play a Ball State team, not only coming off their best game, but coming off a bye week as well. Love the spot for Ball State. And then when you get to the other side of the ball, I mean, Ohio's defense isn't even good. Keep in mind, the MAC championship defense from last year, it's gone. They lost all the starters. Tim Albin, head coach, he's gone as well. They're also missing a couple starters. Linebacker Jack Freeze, defensive lineman Adhugbo, there's a defensive lineman out as well. They've both missed the last couple games. I'm reading there's a chance they can return for this one, but keep in mind, Ohio's got this game and then they have a bye week. Based on what I'm reading, it seems like they're probably going to hold these guys out of this one, get to the bye week, give them an extra 2 weeks. So Ohio, I think, is going to be still missing those two defensive starters. And Ball State, just like I was saying about their defense, their last game, week 4 on the road against UConn, coming off their best offensive game by far. On the road against a strong UConn team, they average over 6.5 yards per play, over 48% success rate, 25 points in the game. They played UConn down to the wire on the road. So this Ball State team coming off a bye, coming off of their best game of the year against the Ohio defense that, and this is the most important aspect of the game, they can't stop the run. In the last 2 weeks, they played Bowling Green and Gardner-Webb. They're allowing over 5.6 yards per carry. If you don't know anything about Uremovich, the new head coach for Ball State, he comes from Butler. very run-oriented, uses the quarterback in the run game a lot, and they've got the perfect quarterback for that here at Ball State in Kyle Kelly. So if you can't stop Gardner Webb's run game, how are you going to stop Ball State's run game coming off their best game, coming off of bye week? I think Ball State's going to be able to move the chains in this game. I think this comes down to the wire. I'm on Ball State plus 17.5. I would still play it at current. What's it at now? 14.5. I think this might be a one-score game. So I'm on Ball State here, plus 17.5. Air Force Navy. Looks like they raised the limits to 10K, and Navy got hit at the minus 11.5, but then it hit 13, and it looks like there was some buyback on Air Force. Time of recording, we're looking at a flat 12. Air Force Navy. Well, we got a service academy game, so you know we're going to see some running of the football. Air Force 4th in the country in rushing frequency. Navy is 2nd. This is an Air Force team that has lost 3 straight Mountain West games. We're approaching the territory where Air Force's season might be in trouble here. It really hasn't been the offense's fault, though. In fact, the Air Force offense has been fine. They're 18th in success rate, 10th in PPA on the year. If you even look at the last 3 games, they just took 3 losses in a row. Again, not the offense's fault. In those 3 losses, they're averaging 34 points per game, over 7 yards per play, success rate up close to 48%. The Air Force offense has been fine. And they're matched up against a Navy defense that has some really strong numbers on the year, and I think they do have a good defense, but really haven't played anybody. The only offense they've played that could even be considered half decent is UAB, and UAB was actually moving the ball on Navy, over 6.8 yards per play in that game. Remember, when they played Tulsa, Kirk Francis was out, so they played Tulsa with a backup quarterback. So this Navy defense really hasn't been tested. The UAB was able to move the ball on them. I think Air Force is able to move the ball on Navy in this game because, like I said, this offense has been very good. It's the other side of the ball where I just don't know what is going on with Air Force. First of all, they're limited in the secondary. Cornerback Levi Brown is most likely still out. This will be the 3rd straight game he's missed. Safety Houston Hendricks also missed a couple games and is listed as questionable. And this is a secondary that's already missing their safety, Kyle Chen. So Air Force very hobbled in the secondary, and it's noticeable. On the season, Air Force is 124th in defensive success rate, 136th in PPA. On paper, this is the worst pass defense in college football so far this year. Dead last in both success rate and PPA per dropback, and they're matched up against a Navy offense that is like top 5 in every advanced metric. This Navy offense looks like a powerhouse. So how is Air Force able to make stops in this game? We pointed out how Air Force was playing some good offense even in the games they lost. Well, look at those 3 losses on the defensive side of the ball. 47.3 points allowed per game, success rate up close to 50%, almost 8.8 yards per play. Wow. This Air Force defense can't seem to stop anybody right now. They're extremely susceptible to explosive plays. 134th in the country in explosive play percentage allowed. Navy should be able to make some big plays, break some long runs, even connect on some big throws. I mean, there's nothing on paper that indicates Air Force is capable of making stops in this game, which is why the way to go here would be over. Here's the problem. When I wrote this article, I wrote over 49.5. It's at 52.5 now, so the market has definitely pushed it up. In fact, FanDuel has this at 53.5. So, yeah, I still think it's a little low, so I'll say over. Maybe a Navy team total over. What is it at? Like 30.5, 31.5, somewhere in there. Yeah, so I think Navy's going to score a lot of points in this game. Air Force should be able to score some points back. So I would lean towards the Navy side in terms of a pick. Give me the over, Navy team total over. Kentucky, Georgia. Looks like Kentucky got hit at the flat 21. It's down to a 20. We're looking at 30K limits, so there seems like they might be comfortable at this 20 number. Kentucky's on the road in Athens. Georgia coming off back-to-back nail-biters here. Intense games, emotional games that came down to the wire. A game they probably should have lost against Tennessee, where they pulled out the win, and a game they actually did lose to Alabama. So you think, okay, Georgia's coming back home after those 2 tough, high-intensity games. They really want to beat up on Kentucky, who is a team Georgia hasn't lost to in a long time, since 2009. 15 consecutive wins against this Kentucky team. That being said, despite beating this team 15 straight times, they haven't really beat up on Kentucky. In fact, Kentucky has given this Georgia team problems at times. Of those 15 consecutive wins, only 6 of them were 3 touchdowns or more. In fact, if the line was Kentucky plus 21.5, they'd be 10-5 against the spread. So we've seen Kentucky play Georgia tough. They can't seem to squeeze out the win, but we've seen Kentucky give Georgia problems plenty of times here. This is a Kentucky team that's coming off a disgusting loss. I mean, on the road in South Carolina, a lot of people, including myself, thought Kentucky was going to be able to give South Carolina some problems. I don't think that South Carolina team is very good. But the truth is the Kentucky offense was terrible. Under 3.9 yards per play, 35% success rate, just 13 points in the game. The offense looked so bad. So you would think there's no way Kentucky can score points on Georgia in this game. And look, I'm not saying that they're going to. I will say we do have to point out that this Georgia defense is looking kind of vulnerable to the pass right now. 111th in success rate per dropback, 118th in PPA per dropback. In their last two games, granted, this is against Tennessee and Alabama, so okay, maybe a little bit of a grain of salt. But this is concerning. Over 325 passing yards allowed per game, over 52% success rate per dropback. So this Georgia secondary looks a little vulnerable. Again, that was against Alabama and Tennessee, so a grain of salt here. Is Kentucky's offense capable of exploiting that? And that's a good question because we really don't know what's going on at the quarterback position for Kentucky. The original starter was Zach Calzada. He got injured in the Ole Miss game, and freshman Cutter Boley takes over. I think Calzada's actually healthy now. I think Cutter Boley may have just taken the job because Cutter Boley was piecing Eastern Michigan up. He actually played well in that Eastern Michigan game, and I kind of think he won the job. But then he just went on the road and played South Carolina, and he was terrible. He had a 29.4 QB rating in the game. He looked bad against South Carolina. So did he lose the job now? I don't think anything's been released. I don't think we know for certain who's starting at quarterback for Kentucky in this one. So yeah, it's not exactly enticing going into Georgia, even though Georgia's look vulnerable against the pass. I will say Kentucky might be getting a receiver back, Troy Stellato. He's a transfer from Clemson. He might be coming back from injury, so maybe they have a little bit of help. It's tough to say because I don't know if I trust this Georgia defense against the pass fully. But I also don't know if you can find anything on paper to indicate Kentucky can throw the ball. On the other side of the ball, though, this is where I think Kentucky can put up a fight. I know you look at this graphic here, and it looks like Georgia's offense is just so superior to Kentucky's defense. And they're definitely better, don't get me wrong. But we do have to consider who they've played so far this year when we're looking at this graphic. I think this Kentucky defense is pretty strong. Keep in mind, they haven't really had a layup game. Like Georgia's had two of them. They played Marshall and Austin Peay. Kentucky's defense, when we're looking at their defensive numbers, they haven't had a layup game like that. Toledo's got the best offense in the MAC. Ole Miss, obviously. Eastern Michigan, look, that defense is terrible. They can score points. That's not a layup game if you're a defense. And then South Carolina. So if Kentucky's defense had games like Marshall and Austin Peay on the schedule, their numbers would look just as green as the Georgia's offense. Kentucky is usually a team that has a strong defense under Stoops. I really would like to see, and I don't know if this is confirmed yet, I really would like to see DJ Waller Jr. return for Kentucky. That's their best corner. He was supposed to be back for the South Carolina game, and then last minute he ended up not playing. So I'm hoping, considering he was supposed to be back for South Carolina, that he'll play in this one. That's their best corner, and he would give them a boost against Georgia. Look, Kentucky always seems to play Georgia tough. I'll take I bet this. I took the plus 21.5. It's at 20.5 now. If you could still get a 21, I'd play it. I wouldn't play it at a 20.5, but if you can get a full 3 touchdowns, I'd play it. I'm on Kentucky here. Iowa State, Cincinnati. This one kind of just bouncing back and forth between 1 and 1.5. Looks like there might have been some Iowa State money at the 1. There's also some injuries in this game, so injury updates could be a reason for the movement as well. At the time of recording, we're looking at a flat Cincinnati -1. Iowa State, Cincinnati. Real quick shout out to Scott Satterfield and the Bearcats. Huge road win last week, 37-34 on the road against Kansas. And another shout out to the Bearcats. My biggest bet last week, well, one of my two biggest bets was the over 54.5 in this game. So shout out to Satterfield for making that sweat free for me. 71 points scored in the game. Was a shootout. So now they're back home, and you might be wondering, why is Cincinnati favored over an undefeated Matt Campbell Iowa State team? And I think injuries to the Iowa State secondary is probably a huge reason for that. They lost both their starting corners, Jeremiah Cooper, Jontez Williams, both out for the season. Iowa State just lost both their starting corners for the year. What a gut punch to a team that really had aspirations of winning the Big 12, playing in the college football playoff. Losing both starting corners sucks. Now, they also lost Dominique Orange, their big defensive tackle in the middle, one of their best players. But I'm pretty sure that injury isn't serious and he's going to play. So I think Big Orange there, or Big Juice, they have a cool nickname for him. I forget what it is. I think he's going to play at defensive tackle. So I think they're good there. But both corners missing. And this is not a matchup you want to be missing your corners in, because the Cincinnati offense with Brendan Sorsby, they seem to just be getting going. Got off to a slow start there against Nebraska, but in the last 3 games, granted, not really against the strongest defensive competition, but Sorsby's got a QB rating over 128, crushing it with a clean pocket, 325 passing yards per game. So to go on the road against the Cincinnati team, missing corners, it's not great for Iowa State. Sorsby is actually turning out to be a pretty good quarterback. We were just talking about this on the live show. He's actually the highest rated quarterback in college football on Pro Football Focus so far this year. Keep in mind, this dude was 3rd team All Big 12 last year, so Cincinnati can score. Now, it's on the other side of the ball. This is where we have some questions for Cincinnati. Are they capable of making stops? And that's a good question. Based on this graphic, you'd say probably not. Cincinnati defensively might be slightly healthier than they have been the last couple weeks. Their best defensive player is Corleone, the defensive tackle in the middle. He missed the last 2 games. I'm reading there's a chance he comes back for this one. They also just got 2 pieces back last week. Linebacker Jack Dingle, cornerback Logan Wilson. They were injured. They both came back last week for the Kansas game. So if Corleone plays at defensive tackle, Cincinnati's defense is going to be healthier in this game than they have been the last few weeks. So if you like Cincinnati, you definitely like that. And honestly, this Iowa State offense, so you guys know I'm a Matt Campbell guy. I like Rocco Becht a lot. They got the head coach. They've got the quarterback. But if you just isolate it to their 3 Power 4 conference games, we didn't really see the most explosive offense. 4.78 yards per play, 41.1% success rate, 26.3 points per game. That's against Kansas State, Iowa, and Arizona. Now, look, Rocco Becht is going to make throws in this game because Cincinnati just doesn't have much of a pass rush. 24.4% pressure rate is not going to cut it. Rocco Becht's been cooking whenever he has a clean pocket all year. So, look, Cincinnati's defense, by no means are they going to shut Iowa State down. But I do think Cincinnati can win this game. I think them being short favorites, I think it's justified. So I lean towards Cincinnati. My pick on the game is actually the over. It's up to 56.5 now. Man, every single one of these numbers is gone. All right, give me the over at 56.5. Lean towards Cincinnati, -1.5. Wisconsin's at the Big House. And actually, the last time Wisconsin came to this building, 49-11. Check this out. This was the worst defeat Michigan has taken since 1935. Now, they had another 38-point loss in a bowl game somewhere sprinkled in there, but it's the worst loss Michigan's taken since 1935. That's what happened the last time Wisconsin went on the road to Michigan. And honestly, Michigan has had problems with this program. They're just 3-5 in their last 8 games against Wisconsin. So this is Wisconsin's had Michigan's number a little bit. That being said, we know this year's Wisconsin team, this isn't the Paul Chryst, Jim Leonard Wisconsin team. This is the Luke Fickell era, and this team just can't move the ball. Now, we don't know the status of Billy Edwards Jr. That's their quarterback. He's missed the last couple, so maybe if Billy Edwards Jr. comes back, they get a bit of a boost. But they're also not healthy in other areas of the offense. Running back Dylan Jones is listed as questionable. Their center, Jake Renfro, he's been banged up. He's listed as questionable. They also have a starting guard, Joe Brunner. He's been limited in practice all week. It's uncertain if he's going to play. So if they may be getting Billy Edwards Jr. back at quarterback, which would be huge, but that's not the only injury problem they have on the offensive side of the ball. This Wisconsin offense is banged up, and it doesn't look good. Meanwhile, Michigan's defense might be getting healthier. Their star safety, Rod Moore, finally back. If you remember, I mean, he hasn't played in like 2 years. He missed all of last year with an injury. He's finally back. That's their star safety from like 2023. So Rod Moore finally back on the field. They do have a couple injuries to corner, Zeke Berry and Jair Hill. But honestly, the corner that's been starting in place of Berry apparently looks like the man. He's a freshman, and they're saying he might have won the job. So Michigan's defense might be slightly healthier, too. So, look, on paper, this looks like a nightmare spot for the Wisconsin offense. If Billy Edwards Jr. doesn't play in this game, I just don't see how we expect Wisconsin to move the ball. Danny O'Neal has really struggled with pressure so far this year. He has a tendency to hold on to the football. You can't hold on to the football on the road at Michigan. This pass rush is coming. 40.1% pressure rate on the year, 53.1% blitz rate on the year. Danny O'Neal's going to be in prison. Honestly, even if Edwards Jr. plays, he's going to be in prison. So, yeah, this is just tough for the Wisconsin offense. In their last 2 games, Wisconsin is averaging 12 points per game. 12. Under 4 yards per play. So, yeah, there's nothing on paper to indicate Wisconsin's going to be able to move the football here. We know the run game isn't going to be there. In the first 4 games, Michigan's allowing 2.41 yards per carry. 2.41. So whoever's playing quarterback is going to be in a situation. Now, on the other side of the ball, this is where I think the matchup is a bit closer. Wisconsin's defense isn't bad at all. In fact, I think this defense is pretty strong. This Michigan offense hasn't looked all that great, although we do have to point out, in terms of injuries, looks like the 2 offensive linemen that were injured have a good chance of playing. Al-Hadi and Norton, they might both be returning from injury. So Michigan might have a healthy offensive line for the first time. Honestly, it might be for the first time this year that they might have the full offensive line healthy. So obviously you don't love that if you're on Wisconsin, but let's give Wisconsin some credit. They've done a great job against the run. In their last 2 games, they played Alabama and Maryland. They're allowing less than 3 yards per carry. So that's definitely solid up against Michigan, who has a freshman quarterback. Bryce Underwood, look, these numbers don't tell the whole story. He hasn't been this bad. I mean, he made a really nice play with his legs against Nebraska. But on paper, you could say, hey, Wisconsin can take the run away from Michigan, force Bryce Underwood to make throws, and then there's no way Michigan can cover a big number. But here's the thing. I actually think this is the perfect spot for Bryce Underwood to play his first good game through the air against a Big Ten opponent at home. Wisconsin's not going to be doing much offensively. I think Bryce Underwood can make some big throws in this game, and I think Michigan's going to make a statement here. So I'm on Michigan, minus 16.5. That Wisconsin offense is really going to struggle. Making sure you can still get that number. Michigan, 17. Yeah, if you can get Michigan minus 17 flat, don't lay 17.5. But I'm on Michigan. Final score 34-13. Clemson, North Carolina. Wow. All right, which of these train wrecks is going to cover the number? Clemson's offense obviously looks terrible. They are healthy now, so finally. Clemson's really been hobbled. They've been missing their left tackle, Tristan Lee. Their right guard, Elijah Thurman. Their superstar wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers in the country, Antonio Williams. They're all back. So maybe you can look at the Clemson offensive numbers and say 69th in success rates, 97th in PPA. That's because they've been injured. Okay, that's fair. They're finally healthy. That being said, they actually came back last week against Syracuse. All 3 of those guys played. Look, the silver lining with the Clemson offense is even in these losses that they're taking, the offense is moving the ball. They just keep shooting themselves in the foot here. In the Georgia Tech game, they were averaging, I don't have it in front of me, they were averaging 8 yards per pass, then 5 yards per carry. The turnover battle was 2-0. And then same goes in the Syracuse game. Hold on, I'm opening it up. I'm sorry, I should have had these in front of me. In the Syracuse game, they're averaging, 6.4 yards per carry, turnover battle, 2-0. So even in these 2 losses they just took, they were moving the ball efficiently. They just kept turning the ball over. They kept shooting themselves in the foot. So this might be the ultimate buy low spot for Clemson's offense, who's finally fully healthy, who's been playing better than the final score indicates. They're playing against a North Carolina defense that, I mean, both times they saw Power 4 opponents, they looked terrible. TCU absolutely lit them up. Okay, excusable. It was the first game of the year. It's a brand new team against a very experienced offense. How do you explain week 4? On the road at UCF, 48.4% success rate. Scott Frost has a new team over there as well. So this North Carolina defense just can't seem to figure it out. So, yeah, the way I see it, this is a perfect opportunity for Clemson to have their first big offensive game. The question is going to be on the other side of the ball. This North Carolina offense sucks. Like, it's so bad. 119th in success rate, 123rd in PPA. Now, if you are looking to take the big number with North Carolina, you can point at a few things. Their best offensive lineman finally back. Austin Blask, that's their center. Probably had a good shot. If he didn't get hurt, probably had a good shot of being all conference. He's back, but he actually returned for the UCF game. So their best offensive lineman who missed the first few games is back. That's number one. Number two, I think we're going to see Max Johnson at quarterback. And not that I think Gio Lopez is bad or anything like that. I just think it's been a few weeks and we might have to admit, all right, he's going to need some time. He is not adjusting, and whatever they were attempting to do here at North Carolina offensively isn't working. Max Johnson came in late in the UCF game, and you can't really take those reps very seriously if they're down like 27 points. But he came in, and then North Carolina immediately started moving the chains. Keep in mind, their backup quarterback, Max Johnson, that's the son of Brad Johnson, the Super Bowl champion. He started before Texas A&M, LSU, I think he was at. He was a starter here in North Carolina last year before he broke his ankle or whatever he injured. So this is a guy with multiple years starting experience. Not only do I think Max Johnson starting a quarterback is not a step down, it might even be a step up right now for Gio Lopez. It's not confirmed that Max Johnson is going to start, but I'm reading he's taking first-team reps in practice. So I think North Carolina is going to get Max Johnson on the field for this one. The question is, how much does that really change? Because the Clemson defense, check this out. This is so crazy. So Clemson's obviously lost the back-to-back games, right? Against Georgia Tech and Syracuse. I'm pulling up their offensive and defensive numbers from those two games. These are the two games they lost. On the offensive side, 47.9% success rate, 6.18 yards per play. Those are good, efficient offensive numbers. On the defensive side, 40% success rate, 5.2 yards per play allowed. Those aren't bad at all. In fact, they're above average. So in terms of overall efficiency, now these don't include turnovers, which is the story of both games, but in terms of overall offensive and defensive efficiency, Clemson played a pretty sound game on both sides of the ball. They lost the turnover battle 2-0 in both games, and that was the story. So I think Clemson might be better than we think on both sides of the ball. And I haven't been betting Clemson or anything. I'm not like a Clemson apologist. I took Syracuse 2 weeks ago. I think Clemson really flexes their muscles here. When I wrote this, I wrote, give me Clemson minus 13.5. So I guess it was 13.5 when I wrote it. It's at 14. There's actually 14.5 now. It would still be Clemson for me at the flat 14. Illinois, Purdue. We'll start with the health of the Illinois secondary because that was kind of the lead story last week, and they got some good news on that front. So the bad news is it looks like Xavier Scott's going to miss probably the entire season. That's their all-conference corner. So one of their best corners out for the year, or at least out for a while. But the good news is their safety, Matthew Bailey, who's one of their leading tacklers, I thought he wasn't going to play last week. He ended up playing in that game, and he should be good to go. And Jaheim Clark, a guy that hadn't played all season, he actually came back last week. I didn't even know there was a chance he could return. And then Caleb Patterson, who was seen on crutches, he actually played a few snaps in the USC game. So I was really worried about this Illinois secondary, and they still have some injury concerns. It's not nearly as bad as I thought it was a week ago. That being said, it didn't really help. I mean, they got cooked defensively. It wasn't Illinois' defense that won that game against USC. 6.36 yards per play allowed, success rate over 56%. So, I mean, we've seen this Illinois secondary struggle against the pass considerably. So I guess the question becomes, is Purdue able to take advantage of this secondary that's clearly a little bit vulnerable? Well, we got to point out that we've seen Illinois get cooked by USC, Duke, Indiana. I mean, Purdue's passing attack is definitely a step down in competition when we're talking about those three programs. That being said, we do have to give some credit to this Purdue offense. Ryan Brown's been all right, man. We saw them making throws. They were scoring points on Notre Dame. He's seen a pretty tough schedule. He's seen a couple tough games here, and Ryan Brown's putting together some decent-looking stat lines. So although Purdue's definitely a step down in competition, this is not just a walkover offense. They can make some throws. They can put up points. In my opinion, the bigger question's on the other side of the ball. Is Purdue capable of making stops against this Illinois offense? If you're a Purdue fan, you like the fact that this game's at home. We've seen Illinois' offense look much better at home. Their road games, their offense didn't look nearly as good. Although, again, we do have to consider the opponents. Illinois' road games were against Duke and Indiana. Certainly much better defenses than Purdue has. The story with this Illinois offense, Altmaier's played pretty well this year. But I think the story is, coming into the year, we were expecting Illinois to have one of the strongest offensive lines in the Big Ten, one of the strongest offensive lines in the country, and we just haven't seen that. They haven't been great in pass protection. We haven't seen much of a run game. Through the first 5 games, they're averaging just 3.93 yards per carry. This might finally be a game where Illinois can show us that offensive line. This is a Purdue defensive line that just lost their starting defensive tackle, TJ Lindsey. He got injured in the USC game. And since he's got injured, I mean, we've basically seen this team get steamrolled on the ground. On their last 2 games, they're allowing 5.6 yards per carry, over 218 rushing yards per game. So missing their defensive tackle, I'm not sure how strong this Purdue defensive line is. And although we haven't seen it yet, this seems like the perfect game where Illinois is able to show us that offensive line, finally show us a run game, finally give Altmaier some run support. So I think we're going to see Illinois control this game with the run. I don't love the fact that Barry Odom's got 2 weeks to prepare for this one. Purdue's coming off a bye. But I really do think Illinois is going to control the game. Not mad at an over. Purdue's probably going to be playing from behind. They run a fast pace. They throw the ball a lot. So I'm not mad at it getting up and over the total. But I would lean towards Illinois here. I would need like a 7.5 to play it, though. 9.5. I personally would make this game 10.5. So my pick for this game is Illinois. I can't bet it at 9.5. Purdue coming off a bye. Could be an ugly Big Ten game. But I think Purdue's going to control this one. Illinois is going to control this one. Give me Illinois minus 9.5 here. Kansas State, Baylor. This one was sitting at 6.5. They raised limbs to $20K, and it looks like we saw some Kansas State money. I should have jumped on this one, man. I like Kansas State from the beginning. We're looking at a flat 5 now at the time of recording. Kansas State, Baylor. We know this Kansas State offense has been pretty terrible this year. We've talked about it ad nauseum. But honestly, so is Baylor's defense. So this might be the perfect matchup for Kansas State. The good news is, and this goes for both of these units, both of them seem to be trending upwards. Kansas State, coming off their best offensive game at home against Central Florida, scored 34 points in the game, over 6.4 yards per play. We saw Dylan Edwards have a big game, and there were some question marks with his health, with his commitment to the program and all that. So to see Dylan Edwards making some plays, to see Kansas State sustaining some offense, putting up a big number, definitely a good sign if you're a Kansas State fan. In addition to that, Avery Johnson even had some efficient passing numbers, which is not something we've said this year. Now, just 168 yards in the game. He didn't set the world on fire, but when he had a clean pocket, he made the correct decision. He handled pressure well. So a good game for Avery Johnson throwing the ball as well. They also might be getting Jerron Bradley back for this game. That's their 6'5" big play wide receiver they got through the transfer portal. He's missed the last couple games. So getting Bradley back from injury would be huge. The bad news is Jace Brown, who's actually their leading receiver right now, he got injured in the UCF game. He's listed as questionable. So hopefully they could have both those guys. They could have neither. We'll have to wait and see. Some injury questions at the wide receiver position for Kansas State. Now, they're matched up against Baylor's defense, which I've said I don't believe to be very good. But just like Kansas State's offense, we do have to give the Baylor defense some credit. They haven't been 100% healthy. They were missing their starting corner there, LeVar Thornton, in the Oklahoma State game. And the last 2 games haven't been that bad for Baylor defensively. In fact, under 40% success rate, 5.45 yards per play. One of those games was against Oklahoma State and a backup quarterback, so whatever. But Arizona State, that defense wasn't that bad. So Baylor's defense may be trending in the right direction. Keep in mind, Aranda is a defensive coach, so it's not out of the realm that Baylor could play some better defense down the stretch. Like I've said multiple times, though, I don't believe this Baylor defense to be very good. And even though I don't trust the Kansas State offense coming into this one with some momentum, I do think they're able to move the ball. The bigger matchup in this one is on the other side of the ball, though. The Baylor offense, which is explosive, against the Kansas State defense, that's a lot better than we've seen so far this year. Their offense hasn't done them many favors. It's tough to be an elite defense when your offense is constantly giving the ball back immediately. Ask the Cleveland Browns about that. Is Kansas State's defense able to make stops on the road against this Baylor offense? We have some injury concerns on the Baylor offense as well. Their star running back, Bryson Washington's listed as questionable, which would be huge. That's a huge playmaker for them in the backfield. He left the Oklahoma State game injured. Also, their starting right guard, he's most likely out. He was injured during the Oklahoma State game. I don't even think he's questionable. I think he's been officially ruled out. So a couple key injuries on the Baylor offense. I've been very bullish on this Baylor offense. Coming into the season, I thought Baylor was going to be one of the best offenses in the country. And not that I've necessarily been wrong. They've been explosive. They've been moving the ball. It's these mistakes, the penalties, the turnovers, they're starting to get a little concerning. If it happens in one big game, okay, things happen. But that's two big games where Baylor basically shot themselves in the foot with timely holding calls, turnovers. I mean, they gave that Arizona State game away, which I appreciated. I was on Arizona State Live, so I appreciated it. But also, they could have won that Auburn game as well. So that's two huge games that they lost. That wasn't that the offense wasn't moving the ball. It was mistakes. They shot themselves in the foot. I mean, they should not be held to 24 points at home against Arizona State's defense. Arizona State's defense is pretty good. They're not elite. So I'm worried about the constant mistakes here for Baylor's offense, and this is going to be a tough one because this Kansas State defense is strong. They played a pretty decent schedule so far this year, and they've got solid defensive numbers. They played Iowa State, UCF, Arizona, and Army. They're allowing 22.8 points per game, under 5.1 yards per play, success rate under 36%. So this Kansas State defense has been strong, and Baylor's a little banged up. I would never expect Baylor's offense to get shut down or anything like that, especially at home. But I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas State's defense makes some plays in this one. Now, where I worry for this Kansas State defense is the explosive plays, because Baylor's offense, explosive play machine. They're actually 13th in the country in explosive play percentage, and Kansas State's defense is 125th in explosive play percentage allowed. So there could be some big plays. Kansas State has got to figure out a way to limit the big plays. But when it comes to betting this one, I don't know how we can lay 6.5. This is the same across all sports. I don't like laying a big number with a team that doesn't make stops. Kind of reminds me of the Pacers. We were blindly taking the Pacers as dogs and blindly fading them as favorites. I feel like we've been doing that with the Pacers for 3 years now. But Baylor, we know they could score, but I can't trust this defense to make stops. So how can we lay 6.5 points to a Kansas State offense that, keep in mind, they went into the bye week, came out, immediately played a good game. Is it that crazy that Kansas State may have gotten their shit together a little bit offensively? Can't lay 6.5 in this one. I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas State is live. Give me Kansas State plus 6.5. Army UAB, and check it out. We're seeing some Trent Dilfer money. Limits hit 10K. UAB gets hit at +7. We're now looking at 6.5. Army's on the road against UAB, and Army's offense should have an opportunity to look pretty good in this game because everybody looks pretty good against UAB's defense. This is one of, if not the worst defense in the FBS. Certainly doesn't help that UAB is going to be playing this game without their starting safety. He's suspended for the game after an unsportsmanlike conduct in the Tennessee game. I believe he stomped on the kicker's hand or something. So their starting safety, Sherrod Bryant, not playing in this game for UAB. We already saw this UAB defense attempt to make stops against a service academy. They went on the road to Annapolis. It wasn't pretty. 60.3% success rate. Navy did not have problems moving the ball against this UAB defense. Now, Army's offense is nowhere near Navy's this year. Navy's very strong, and this is the weakest Army team we've seen. This year's Army's team is not comparable to last year's, but this UAB defense is so bad that you just can't count on them to make stops against anybody. So Army should not have problems moving the ball. Also, Army was very undisciplined in their last game on the road against ECU, so I'm sure they'll shore that up. Some really key drop passes, a bad fumble in there. So, yeah, Army should move the ball because everybody moves the ball against UAB. If UAB wants to compete in this game, it's got to be on this side of the ball. And honestly, they really might. This UAB offense, they can move the ball. They're 29th in success rate, 39th in PPA. And this Army defense is not good, specifically against the pass. They've really struggled. Army played that great game on the road at Kansas State, right? They picked up the win, won outright. They were 17-point dogs In the 2 games since then, they have not been playing defense. 52.8% success rate. They're allowing 36.5 points per game. And like I said, this UAB defense can score some points. They opened up the season and they had that ugly game against Alabama State. I think they won 52-42 against an FCS program. And we were all kind of like, well, UAB's trash again. And the defense, and as far as the defense, we were probably right on that. It's not being talked about as much that UAB has actually looked decent the past few weeks. They covered the number against Navy. They were scoring points. They covered the number against Tennessee. They were scoring points. They were moving the ball in both those games. On the season, they're averaging 32.8 points per game, 6.6 yards per play. Success rate up close to 49%. They've covered the number both times this year as underdogs, 2-0 against the spread by an average cover margin of 7. So they've kept it within the number. Both times they were underdogs. I don't know how we trust this Army pass defense. It would only be UAB plus 7.5 here. I think they can throw the ball in Army, and I can't picture laying 7.5 points on the road with Army. The problem is Monken is just so many levels higher than Dilfer when it comes to coaching. So I don't love the idea of taking the significantly worse head coach. Should get up and over the total too. What's it at now? What's the total at? 1 second. 57.5. Yeah, that's where it was when I wrote this. So yeah, over 57.5, and it would only be UAB plus 7.5 as far as the side. UTSA Temple, man, who knows what we have with this Temple offense? We've got some crazy looking data points here. They went off in the first 2 games, but they played UMass and Howard. Still 48.5 points per game, almost 8 yards per play. Looked explosive. Then the last 2 games, they didn't do much offensively at all, but they played Oklahoma and Georgia Tech. So kind of crazy data points. They beat up on the teams they were supposed to beat up on, and then they struggled against the teams they were supposed to struggle against. This UTSA defense, I would imagine, is somewhere in the middle of these data points. So far, their defense hasn't looked great, but they've also been dealing with some injuries on this side of the ball. There might be some good news in that department. Cam Cooper is their edge rusher. He hasn't played since the opener. He might be coming back here. Also, Anyanwu, I hope I said that correctly. He missed last season with a torn ACL. Looks like he's finally back. He had 3 sacks in the Colorado State game. So it looks like UTSA might be slightly healthier on the defensive side. Still, this isn't a great defense. They're 108th in PPA, 59th in success rate, and this is not a team I trust away from the Alamo Dome, even though that's mostly on the other side of the ball. Casey Keeler's a hell of a coach. He runs a really tricky offense. It's a tough offense to prepare for. I personally think Temple's going to move the ball and score some points in this game. It's really on the other side of the ball. That's where the bigger question. I mean, that's the strength of the UTSA offense. They can score some points. I know this graphic doesn't really show it. 110th in success rate, 54th in PPA. But this is an explosive offense. The problem is, just like I was saying before, this game is on the road. This is not at home in the Alamo Dome. Last year, UTSA averaged over 42 points per game in their home games. Over 42 points per game. They were undefeated. They were 6-0 at home. They only averaged 23 points per game on the road. So this is a completely different offense away from the Dome. This game is most definitely outdoors. Temple plays at the Lincoln Financial. It's on grass, not turf. We just saw UTSA, this explosive offense. They went on the road to Fort Collins. They really struggled to score against that Colorado State defense. They had 17 points. 14 of those points came on a 74-yard touchdown and a 64-yard touchdown. So they really didn't do much of anything against Colorado State's defense other than a couple huge plays. So should we trust this offense outdoors? Well, Colorado State's unique. It's in the elevation. Temple's defense is not quite as talented as Colorado State. So I doubt Temple can shut UTSA, their offense, down like Colorado State did. In addition to not being as talented as Colorado State, Temple's also dealing with some injuries on this side of the ball. Looks like they're going to be missing a couple starters in the secondary and a starting linebacker. So it looks like 2 or 3 starters are going to miss this one for Temple on the defensive side of the ball. Although I was reading into it, the starters that are starting in place of the missing pieces in the secondary, they're not freshmen. One is a 7th-year redshirt senior, and the other is a redshirt senior. So at least the starters that are starting in place of the injured players, they seem to be experienced. I'm not going to pretend to know a ton about it, but that's what I read. So maybe not a huge drop-off for the injuries to Temple's defense. Something I like for Temple's defense is they've done a good job at limiting explosive plays. As we just talked about, that's UTSA's bread and butter. We saw a couple in the Texas A&M game. I mean, UTSA is actually third in the country in explosive play percentage, but Temple's defense done a decent job of limiting them. Also, Temple could probably create a few of those of their own. On the other side of the ball, they're 46th, and UTSA, as good as they are at creating explosive plays, they're really bad at allowing them. So, I mean, I think Temple's live in this game, but I want to be clear, this is just a bet on Casey Keeler. UTSA is the significantly better team. I just don't trust them nearly as much outside. So it would only be Temple plus 6.5 here. I didn't bet it, but I think they're live. Wake Forest, Virginia Tech. This one was at 6.5. Looks like it got bought up to 7, and then immediately Wake Forest got hit. It's down to a flat 6 now. Wake Forest, Virginia Tech. So the Hokies part ways with Brent Pry. Philip Montgomery takes over as the interim head coach, and they immediately go on the road and grab an outright win as a 9.5-point underdog. Shout out to Virginia Tech for that one. I had that. So yeah, Virginia Tech 1-0 under interim head coach Philip Montgomery. So I guess what we need to figure out is, was that a one-time coaching change spike in production, or is this Virginia Tech team going to be better down the stretch under Phil Montgomery? Well, one thing I will say for Virginia Tech is their defense is way better than these numbers indicate. On the year, they're 98th in success rate, 127th in PPA. They've got terrible numbers against the pass. I mean, the defense doesn't look good on paper so far this year. But, I mean, if you take a closer look at the game logs, they got lit up in 2 of the games that are definitely skewing these numbers, Old Dominion and Vanderbilt. And Old Dominion was, like, kind of on the last legs there. Vanderbilt ran it up in the second half. I'm not saying we disregard those data points. I'm just saying I personally think Virginia Tech's defense is way better than their numbers show. If you look at their road games, South Carolina and NC State, they played great defense in both of those. So I think this Virginia Tech defense is pretty strong, especially against the run. And this Wake Forest offense, I mean, first of all, we don't even know who's playing quarterback in this game. Robbie Ashford's listed as questionable. He left the Georgia Tech game injured. He actually returned to finish the game hobbled. He was limping, but I'm not sure if he plays this week. He's listed as questionable. The other quarterback's Deshaun Purdy. You might remember him. He was a starter at Charlotte last year. I don't know how much of a downgrade he is. It was an open quarterback competition in camp. I personally don't think either of them are particularly good. Wake Forest does not have much of a passing attack. They're definitely an offense that relies on the run, and I just don't see them running the ball on this Virginia Tech defense. So it should be a struggle for Wake offensively in this one, regardless of who's playing quarterback. On the other side of the ball, this is where we got to give Dickert his props, man. So Dickert gets hired. This is year 1 for him as head coach at Wake Forest, and he's a defensive guy, and we're seeing the effects immediately. This Wake Forest defense is actually pretty good, which is not anything like the Wake Forest defense we saw last year. They might be able to generate some stops here against Virginia Tech, whose offense certainly isn't impressing anybody. Kyron Drones has a tendency to hold on to the football, 3.11 average time to throw this year. Wake Forest has actually been generating some pressure. They've been pretty physical, pretty tough against the run. I think Wake can generate some stops in this game. I just don't trust them to move the ball, which is why, look, I don't really understand why the market doesn't like my bet in this one. I have under 50.5. You can get a 51.5 now. I don't understand where are the points coming from. I'm not claiming to be sharper than the market. Clearly, somebody is buying this number up. I think this is a super low-scoring game, like 24-17. Yeah, let's say 24-17. I think this is way too high. I would make this total like 44.5, honestly. Now, again, I'm missing something, but I think this game stays under. I'm on under 50.5. I personally think Virginia Tech wins by a touchdown, so I would lean towards Virginia Tech, but give me the under. I actually bet that. Eastern Michigan, Buffalo. I mean, I personally think Buffalo laying 10.5 points to Eastern Michigan is crazy, but I just took a big loss with Eastern Michigan last week. Got a great number. Didn't matter. Central Michigan controlled that game start to finish. The reason I think 10.5 is a crazy number for this one is Eastern Michigan does have a passing attack with Noah Kim, and this Buffalo secondary is vulnerable. They were vulnerable last year. They brought back their starters, which you would expect it to improve a little bit, but this secondary wasn't good last year. I got to say, though, Buffalo's defense has held up the last couple games. The Troy game, whatever, was a backup quarterback, but UConn, I really expected UConn to move the ball on this Buffalo defense. UConn has a quarterback. They have a passing attack. They held UConn to 20 points in the game, so they really impressed me in that defensive performance against UConn. Maybe the secondary is coming along. In this Eastern Michigan offense, a passing attack that I thought we can trust, it's their defense we can't trust. I mean, they were held to 13 points on the road at Mount Pleasant. Now, they always struggle on the road at Mount Pleasant, but 5.23 yards per play, 42.9% success rate. When you're an offensive team, that's not going to get it done. So, yeah, last week's data points kind of throw off my theory. Buffalo's secondary played pretty well, and Eastern Michigan's offense kind of shit the bed against Central Michigan. But I still think Eastern Michigan can move the ball. I think Noah Kim can make throws on this Buffalo secondary. So we'll see. On the other side of the ball, I know you can't trust Eastern Michigan's defense. It's so bad. I will say they've been injured. They've also played a really tough schedule defensively. McNulty, their captain, their safety, he's finally back. He's played the last two. But Malchan, their other captain, their linebacker, he's been out. So they haven't had their two captains, their two best defensive players on the field at the same time this whole year. Having both those guys out there would definitely help. But I don't even know if Malcham's definitely coming back. They're being really sketchy with the injury reports. If they both play, Malchan and McNulty's going to play. He's back. If both those guys play, I think this Eastern Michigan's defense is way better than these numbers show. That being said, it's again, it's really tough to have faith in this unit. They just went on the road to Mount Pleasant, and Central Michigan, who's not even a great offense, by the way. Matt Drinkall comes from Army. That's the new head coach. He's slow rushing attack. I mean, 51.4% success rate, over 6.8 yards per play. If you're having trouble making stops against Central Michigan, you're really going to struggle. Not that Buffalo's offense is setting the world on fire, but they do get their starting quarterback back, or at least they're supposed to. He's listed as probable. Taquan Roberson didn't play last week against UConn. I don't even think he's particularly good. Buffalo's more of a run-first team, but it's always good to have your starting quarterback out there. So I can't trust this Eastern Michigan defense, even though I do think it's better than the numbers show. It's Eastern Michigan plus 10.5 for me here, but everyone's going to hate that one because I was big on Eastern Michigan last week, and they still had a chance to backdoor cover at the end but like, even if they did, they didn't deserve it. So Eastern Michigan plus 10.5. I don't think Buffalo's that good, but I can't do it. I can't bet it. Central Michigan, Akron. So the Zips are not a good football team, as I'm sure you know if you followed college football this year. Wow. I mean, not that I expected Akron to be any good, but I can't quite believe that they're this bad. They've actually been slightly better defensively than offensively, which is crazy to me. Now you might be looking at this graphic and saying, Kyle, what do you mean they've been slightly better defensively? These numbers are somehow better than their offensive numbers. They're 118th in success rate, 120th in PPA. They're up against a Central Michigan offense that isn't particularly great. They played pretty well last week against Eastern Michigan, but this isn't a great offense by any means. They got a new head coach, new system there at Central Michigan. If you're looking for a reason to bet Akron, you can say their defense actually played pretty well in both of their home games. They allowed just 8.5 points per game, 4.6 yards per play, success rate under 32%. So they actually played two defensive games in both their home games, and this is a home game. That being said, you look at the competition. They played Wyoming and Duquesne. So, I mean, Central Michigan obviously a step up there. We were just talking about the Central Michigan Eastern Michigan game, 24-point success rate over 51%. Central Michigan's probably most complete offensive game of the year. The Central Michigan offense, again, I don't think it's particularly good, but the data points are a little tough to read. That San Jose State game in the opener, they got up to a 10-0 lead, and then they didn't really do anything after that. Then they didn't do anything against Pittsburgh and Michigan, but they're not supposed to do anything against Pittsburgh and Michigan. They lit up Wagner. Okay, who cares? And then against Eastern Michigan last week, it was 21-6 at half. They scored on the first three drives of the game, and then didn't really score after that. The final score was 24-13. So I really don't know. I don't think this Central Michigan offense is very good, but they proved me wrong last week, so I don't want to doubt them either. And Akron's not good at all, so I really don't know what to do here. On the other side, I can't believe this Akron offense is this bad. Joe Moorhead at head coach. They bring back Ben Finley at quarterback, even though he's been hurt. 136th in PPA. Ben Finley he's listed as questionable. It's uncertain if he's coming back. I personally don't think this Akron offense is this bad. You bring back the head coach and the quarterback, and Akron was throwing the ball a little bit last year. I don't think it's this bad. So if Ben Finley plays, I would lean towards Akron, but I can't, without knowing if he's playing, and based on what we've seen from Akron, I think I'm best just staying away from this one. Oregon State on the road against Appalachian State. First off, looks like Malik Murphy is going to be good to go. He got injured in overtime of the Houston game, which, what a game, by the way. If you guys remember, I was on Oregon State money line. They almost pulled it out. So quarterback Malik Murphy, he got injured in overtime of that Houston game, but I'm reading he's been taken off the injury report. So Oregon State should have their quarterback active in this one. On the year, this App State defense, these numbers are a little bit misleading. They're 44th in success rate, 69th in PPA. So it looks like, oh, App State's playing some defense this year. Not really. You'll see when we take a look at the schedule. The story of that Houston game, which I did not see this coming. Oregon State got their starting right guard back. He had been injured, and I'm not saying this is the whole reason for this, but the run game was there against Houston. I wasn't expecting this at all. 189 yards rushing in the game, over 53% success rate per rush. Oregon State was handed the ball off between the tackles and running the ball on Houston. So maybe getting the starting right guard back gave him a boost. Maybe Houston came in flat. Who knows? But the run game was there for Oregon State. I'm not sure if they're going to have that same success. You got to keep in mind, they're no longer in Corvallis. They're not only going on the road, they're flying across the country to App State here. And App State, again, I don't think their defense is good, but they actually have been strong against the run. So far, 2.13 yards per carry, under 62 rushing yards allowed per game. They kind of cake those stats in the Charlotte and Lindenwood games, but they have been okay against the run so far this year. If you isolate their defensive numbers to just the last two, though, they got lit up. Not so much on the ground, but they got lit up. 38 points per game allowed, 50% success rate, almost 7 yards per play. And that was against Southern Miss and Boise, and both of those games were on the road. So now they're back home at App State. I don't think this App State defense is good, but based on what we saw in their first two home games, I think they're able to keep Oregon State from gashing them on the ground. This is definitely a secondary that's vulnerable. The question is, do you trust Malik Murphy and this Oregon State passing attack to exploit the App State secondary? It didn't look all that pretty. I mean, even when Malik Murphy put the ball where it was supposed to be, the receivers were dropping it. I mean, if you look at Malik Murphy's numbers on the year, it's pretty ugly. 79.3 QB rating. I mean, you could see the graphic. It doesn't look great. Malik Murphy's not having a great year, but look at the top of the graphic. Look at these opponents. Are you kidding me? Cal, Fresno is the easy game. Texas Tech, Oregon, Houston. Like, what a gauntlet of a schedule to start here for Malik Murphy in this Oregon State offense. If you isolate his numbers to just the Fresno State game, who's probably the most comparable to this App State defense, doesn't look that bad. I mean, it's still not great, but it doesn't look that bad. Regardless, that game was at home, and now he's on the road across the country. Also, I'm not sure if Oregon State's capable of kicking field goals right now. It's not a joke. Their kicker actually got injured trying to make a tackle in the Houston game. They actually had an opportunity to beat Houston if they can make a field goal, and they couldn't do it. So I'm not sure if Oregon State is capable of kicking a field goal right now, which is important in the sport of football. So I don't trust this Oregon State offense here on the road, even though I don't really trust the App State defense either. But I think App State can play a good defensive game. On the other side of the ball, these two units are pretty even. Again, if you isolate just the last two games when App State saw some tougher opponents, didn't look great. Oregon State's defense is not Southern Miss and Boise, but 22 points per game, 40.9% success rate, 5.22 yards per play. Considering both these games were on the road and those opponents are probably tougher than Oregon State, I think App State's offense can get back on track. I am honestly considering betting App State here. It sucks laying points to a better team. Oregon State's definitely the better team, but on the complete other side of the country, it's only 1.5. App State coming off back-to-back tough games against tough road games against tough opponents. This seems like a winnable game for App State. So at 1.5, I think I might bet it. It seems like that was kind of Oregon State left it all on the field in that Friday night Houston game in Corvallis, and this seems like they turned back into a pumpkin. So I think App State's going to steal this win. Give me the Mountaineers here. Virginia, Louisville. This one was at 7, went up to 7.5, and then they raised the limits, and it looks like Virginia got hit at that 7.5. We're looking at a flat 7 now, 20K limits. Virginia, Louisville. We all saw it Friday night. It was awesome. We were all on Virginia plus the 7.5. They went outright. The upset, the field storm, that was awesome. 46-38 Final score, one of the most fun college football games to watch of the year. Great win for Virginia. I got to say, there was definitely an aspect of the game that concerned me, though. The fact that every time Florida State handed the ball off, they were ripping Virginia's front seven to shreds. 5.49 yards per carry, 55% success rate per rush, 258 yards rushing in the game. Virginia's defensive line was getting blown off the ball in that Florida State game, and that was at home. Now they go on the road, and this is a concern because Louisville's got two very good RBs there in Isaac Brown and Duke Watson. Both have been dealing with injuries, but both ended up playing in the Pittsburgh game. This Louisville offense, look, I'm not a big fan of Miller Moss, but they can run the ball. They've got a good offensive line, and they've got talent at the running back position. And they're coming off a game where they really couldn't get the run going. Just 1.64 yards per carry, 32.3% success rate per rush. That was on the road, number one. And number two was against Pittsburgh. Pitt has one of the best defensive fronts in the country. Pitt might have a top 10 run defense, certainly a top 25 run defense. So now they come off a game where they go on the road. They struggle to run the ball. They come back home against a Virginia defensive front that's much more vulnerable to the run. I think we're going to see Louisville hand the ball off, and I think they're going to have a lot of success doing it. Now, like I said, I'm not the biggest Miller Moss guy, but let's give him some credit. He just went on the road to Pitt. They won the game outright. He didn't even have any run support at all, and he really handled himself pretty well. Now, look, his stat line, 339 yards is good, 95.1 QB rating. It wasn't excellent, and I mean, Pittsburgh turning the ball over 5 times. That's why Louisville won. But Miller Moss on the road with no run support, he handled himself pretty well. So now back at home, I expect the run game to be there. Virginia's defense not as good as Pitt's. I wouldn't be surprised if Miller Moss plays pretty well also. But in reality, what I really like for Louisville is I expect them to run the ball in this game. On the other side of the ball, this is where Virginia is just turning some heads. This offense is a problem, man. 23rd in success rate, 12th in PPA. They're going to have their hands full because this Louisville defense looks very strong. There was criticism coming into that Florida State game that Virginia was racking up offensive numbers against weaker competition. Well, they silenced that because they put up 46 points against Florida State, 50% success rate in the game. The thing is, and if you watch the Virginia-Florida State game, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. In the second half, there was 2 drives in a row where Virginia was just handing the ball off and slamming it between the tackles on the Florida State defensive front seven, and nobody saw that coming, including Florida State. I don't even think, and most of us thought Virginia had that in them. The thing is, now Louisville has that on film. They saw what Virginia did in the second half of that Florida State game, just hand the ball off, slamming it between the tackles. Do we really think Virginia can get that off on the road against this Louisville defensive front? I mean, they just completely took the run away from Pittsburgh. Now, Pitt didn't have Desmond Reed in the game, their star running back. But still, they just went on the road. Pittsburgh had 28.6% success rate per rush. So that success Virginia had running the ball against Florida State, I think there was an aspect of Florida State just wasn't expecting that in the second half. If Virginia wants to compete in this game, Chandler Morris is going to have a big game throwing the ball. And it's not that he's incapable, but Chandler Morris throwing the ball is not why they beat Florida State. In fact, his passing numbers don't even look that great in the game. He used his legs and made some plays, but it was Virginia running the ball and Chandler Morris using his legs. That's what won that game. So on the road in Louisville, I'm sure Chandler Morris will make some throws. He's a great quarterback, but I think Louisville's able to take the runaway from Virginia and keeping them from doing what they did to Florida State. And I think Louisville's going to be able to run the ball themselves and force Virginia to play from behind. So that was awesome. That win over Florida State. I think they come back down to earth here. I think Louisville gets the win. Looking at recent scores, as far as the bet, looking at recent scores from these two teams, you would think this is going to be a shootout. But I actually bet the under 62.5. After seeing what Florida State did to the Virginia defensive front, I'm thinking Louisville comes out, runs the ball, hands it off to Isaac Brown and Duke Watson, controls the clock, sustains some long drives. And I actually think Louisville's defense is able to slow Virginia down. So 62.5 is a big number if we're expecting to see a lot of running, which I am. So yeah, I'm on under 62.5. I lean towards Louisville as well, but I'm not trying to lay 6.5 points to Virginia. I think this is a pretty strong team. But I'm on the under, 62.5. Vanderbilt, Alabama. You could have got a good number on Vandy if you jumped early on one of those soft numbers. They seem pretty set at 9.5. The limits keep raising, and I'm sorry, at 10.5. Limits keep raising, and they seem to be just sitting at that 10.5 number. Vanderbilt, Alabama. We all know what happened last year. One of the games of the year. Vanderbilt pulled off the impossible. They beat Alabama at home. Final score 40-35. Place was going crazy. The student section literally carried the goalposts down the block. They tossed it in the Cumberland River. So, yeah, it was a very memorable moment in college football last year. There's really not much to say about this game other than it's a question of whether or not you believe in what Vanderbilt's doing, because these numbers are crazy. This is the most efficient offense in college football so far this year. They're second in success rate, second in PPA. Now, this Alabama defense did just lose a piece. Quay Russo, he got injured early in the Georgia game. He's going to miss significant time. I think that's one of their edge rushers. But they also just got Tim Keenan, the third back defensive tackle. He just came back. So Alabama loses a starter on the defense, but they get a starter back. Now, if you're trying to say Vanderbilt's racking up all these numbers against non-SEC opponents, okay, that's fair. But week 3, Vanderbilt went on the road to Columbia against South Carolina. 48.4% success rate. South Carolina's defense couldn't get them off the field. 5.13 yards per play isn't electric, but South Carolina's defense could not get this offense off the field. And how could you argue with that data point? They went into Columbia and beat South Carolina 31-7. It was a road SEC game. They won by more than 3 touchdowns. I just don't know what else we could see from Vanderbilt before we just accept, like, this is a very, very strong team. And I don't know how you could lay double-digit points to them. Now, does that necessarily mean they're able to move the ball in Tuscaloosa? No, this Alabama defense is very good. In fact, coming into the season, I thought Alabama had the best defense in the country. And the thing about Alabama, if you're on Alabama, what you're looking at is the fact that they're 2 big games. The 2 data points we're using for Alabama, they were both on the road. It was the opener against Florida State that was at Doak Campbell in a harsh environment with a quarterback making his first start. And then the Georgia game was on the road as well. So the 2 games that we all watched and we all keep referring to for Alabama were both on the road. Their 2 home games, the defense looked insane, 7 points per game. I mean, it was against Louisiana Monroe and Wisconsin with Danny O'Neal, so who cares? But I think this Alabama defense is very, very good, and I'm not trying to overlook them. This Vanderbilt offense, you just can't get them off the field, and it's hard to picture this offense getting shut down the way they look right now. Now, on the other side of the ball, this is where obviously we expect Alabama to move the football and score some points. Vanderbilt's defense, much better than last year's defense, but this is still by no means an elite defense. I'm also not sure the status of Ouattara. That's one of Vanderbilt's best defensive players. He hasn't played yet this year. And earlier in the season, they said that they were targeting the Alabama game to bring him back. I'm not sure if he's going to play. So Vanderbilt could get Ouattara back on the defensive line, but I'm not sure. As far as the Alabama offense, I'm a buyer, man. I think Ty Simpson passes the eye test, throws a really good ball. He looks excellent. He had that rough opener on the road in Doak Campbell. Just a crazy spot to make your first career start. Since then, I mean, he's looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. This passing attack looks unstoppable. You can see here the numbers, just green everywhere in his last 3 games. Now, the run game hasn't really been there for Alabama, but you got to keep in mind they were missing their star running back, Jam Miller, until last week, and he's back. So maybe Alabama has a little bit more of a run game moving forward, but I think this is going to be a passing team, and it looks really good. Not to mention, Vanderbilt's actually been really strong against the run. Granted, they haven't seen an offense like Alabama, but they're allowing just 3.02 yards per carry, under 80 rushing yards per game. And I mean, look, South Carolina is not the best offense, but it's a road SEC game. Utah State can run the ball. It's not like they seem nobody. Virginia Tech on the road as well. Again, not offenses that compare to Alabama, but this Vanderbilt defense is definitely better than last year. It doesn't matter because even last year when Vanderbilt beat Alabama, it wasn't their defense. Alabama was moving the ball with Milroe last year. They scored 35 points, 55.6% success rate. Their problem was they couldn't get Vanderbilt's offense off the field, and they lost their turnover battle 2-0. So, yeah, I think Alabama's going to move the ball just fine. I just don't know if they can get off the field. I think Pavia is going to keep moving the chains like he seems to always do. As far as betting it, I'm on Vanderbilt. I got 13.5. I would still bet it at 10.5. I would make this game 7.5 personally. I don't know how you lay double digits based on what we've seen so far this year. Look, talent-wise, maybe Vanderbilt's not the most talented team in college football, but in terms of just overall raw efficiency, they might be the most efficient college football team right now. And everyone's got this one circled with Alabama. Everyone's targeting Pavia. I think he loves it. I think he's going to be all about it. So, yeah, I'm on Vanderbilt at plus 13.5. I'd still bet it at 10.5. Washington, Maryland. Looks like we finally saw some Terps money. Those of you that were following along, I sent out Maryland at 5.5 early, and then the number shot up to 6.5, and I was like, oh, shit. It looks like they raised the limit to $20K, and the Terps got hit at plus 6.5. So we finally saw some Maryland money here. I think we're sitting at 5.5 mostly at the time of recording. Washington, Maryland. The Terps came through for me in week 4, which was their last game. They're coming off a bye week, and it was impressive. I had Maryland plus 10. They won outright by 17 points. And look, we know Wisconsin's not a good team this year. It's one of the worst offenses in the Big Ten, but man, they've got a freshman quarterback who is making his first road start on the road in Madison. Not a tough place to go score points. So this is a huge data point, huge win for Maryland. Very impressive. And the criticism on Maryland, specifically on the defensive side, is these numbers are fraudulent. They're 4th in success rate, 4th in PPA. They've played an insanely easy schedule, and it's fair. They really haven't played anybody. Wisconsin has no offense at all. So I understand the criticism that Maryland's defense is fraudulent. These numbers aren't real. I'm not even saying I disagree. I'm just saying you could also kind of make the same point about Washington's offense. Sure, the numbers look great on the year, but they didn't do much against Ohio State. 4.42 yards per play, 6 points in the game, and that was at home. Granted, Maryland's defense is not Ohio State's. I get it, but it was at home. Now they're flying across the country to play in Maryland. If you look at who they played in their first 3 games, Colorado State, UC Davis, and Washington State were throwing Washington a parade for putting up big offensive numbers in those 3 games. I would hope they would. Also, Washington might be missing an offensive lineman in this game. Their left tackle, Carver Willis, he's listed as questionable. So Washington might be missing an offensive lineman. Look, basically what I'm saying is the criticism people are giving Maryland's defense, that, they're caking the numbers up against some bad opponents. I think you can kind of offer the same sort of criticism for Washington's offense. And honestly, same goes for Washington's defense as well. Yeah, they look great in the first 2 games against Colorado State and UC Davis. In the last 2 games, they actually did a pretty solid job against Ohio State on the defensive side of the ball. But Washington State, that game was 31-24 going into the fourth quarter. Washington scored 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to make it look like this blowout. It really wasn't. Eckhouse was throwing the ball on this Washington defense, and you're coming off the big game against Ohio State. You immediately fly across the country to play a Maryland team who's coming off a bye. And let's not forget that the Terps have a rising superstar at quarterback here, Malik Washington. Now, we're only, 5 weeks into the season. He looks like the real deal. Everyone kind of thought he was going to come back down to earth in his first road start against a very good Wisconsin defense. He played well in Madison, so he seems to be checking all the boxes. And look, is Washington the better team? Of course, but I think this Maryland team is just way better. We're basing our opinion on the market's basing their opinion on Maryland based on what's happened in years past. Maryland starts folding when they get into Big Ten play, but I don't think they've had a quarterback like this. Malik Washington's very good. So coming off the bye week, you got one of the new Big Ten teams from the West Coast flying completely across the country to play a Big Ten team who is coming off a bye week. Yeah, I'm on Maryland here. Look, the market hates this one. What's it at now? It's at 6.5. Yeah, I got 5.5, so I got a bad number. I think Maryland plays this one down to a field goal. I think they're live. So maybe Malik Washington and the Terps come crashing down to earth. I'm on the Terps. I believe in Malik Washington. I think he's the real deal. Texas, Florida, and we've seen a lot of Gators money coming in. It got as high as 7. It's been bought down. They raised them to 10K. Florida got hit again at 6. It looks like we finally saw Texas get hit at 4.5. Looking like a flat 5 at the time of recording. I think this probably closes around 5.5. Texas, Florida in the swamp. Well, we know Florida's had some problems so far this year, but hasn't been on the defensive side of the ball. In fact, the defense looks good. They're 23rd in success rate, 17th in PPA. The Florida defense has been significantly better than the Texas offense has. And you got to keep in mind when we're matching up the numbers from Texas start to the season and Florida's, Florida played a much different schedule. I mean, Florida was on the road in Miami. They were on the road at LSU. They played South Florida, who has an improved defense. So Florida's been tested. Texas had one game on the road against Ohio State. They looked terrible. Other than that, they've just been on cruise control, playing the easiest of teams. So you look at Florida's 3 losses here: South Florida, at LSU, at Miami. The defense, 39.1% success rate, 21.3 points allowed per game. The defense has been fine. So it's not Florida's defense that hasn't been holding up their end. The defense has played well. And look, is Florida's defense on the level of Ohio State's? No. But in terms of harsh environments, like going on the road in the swamp and putting up points, it's not a picnic. And I don't know what we've seen from Arch Manning. Do we think he's developed so much in the last 4 weeks? Week 1 on the road in Ohio State, he was terrible. He was making poor decisions. Even at the end of the game, when they were driving back down to try to tie it, he took a shot in the corner of the end zone. There was a receiver open over the middle. Poor decisions, inaccurate. Look, it was his first start of the season on the road in Columbus. You can't judge someone completely by that. But I don't know what we've seen since then to change our minds. I mean, they haven't played anybody. So I don't know how, based on what we've seen, that you can trust Arch Manning to go on the road to the swamp and just piece up Florida, a defense who's played really well. I'm not seeing it there. Now, maybe Arch Manning has a coming out party, and this is where he just goes nuts, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, Arch Manning's the real deal. But based on what we've seen, I don't know how you can predict that. Now, on the other side of the ball, this is going to be a nightmare for Florida because Texas defense is very, very good. Kind of like I was just saying about Florida, the defense has held up their end. The Texas defense has held up their end, and 9th in success rate, 5th in PPA is pretty damn good. Granted, they haven't really played anybody outside the Ohio State game, but Florida's offense has been a nightmare. DJ Lagway has not played well at all. The big plays have not been there. Turnovers are a problem. He's taking a lot of sacks, just not what you want to hear before you play Texas, because they have one of the best pass rushers in the country, and there's nothing on paper that's going to show you DJ Lagway is going to have a huge game against the Texas defense. Now, he did play really well against some good defenses last year, so I don't want to say it's impossible, but kind of what I was saying about Arch Manning, based on what we've seen, I don't know how you can make that prediction. Now, there is some good news for Florida. Looks like we're finally going to get this superstar wide receiver recruit, Dallas Wilson. He was the number 2 receiving recruit, 5-star in the country. And you're thinking, well, Kyle, a freshman wide receiver can't have that much of an impact. Well, then you must not be watching college football the last couple of years, because Jeremiah Smith was a freshman. Ryan Williams was a freshman last year. Jacorian Moore. So Dallas Wilson is the number 2 wide receiver recruit in the country. The number 1 wide receiver recruit in the country is Jacorian Moore, and he leads Oregon in receiving. He was making plays in Happy Valley against Penn State. So this kid, Dallas Wilson, is supposed to be the real deal, and he's finally going to make his Florida debut. So DJ Lagway should have a new weapon to throw to. Look, regardless, I'm not expecting DJ Lagway or the Florida offense to do much. I just think the Florida defense can play great. I think this comes down to the wire. I think Florida's live. This is we saw it last year when everyone kind of counted Florida out. They started winning games. They still played hard for Billy Napier down the stretch. I think Florida could play well in this game, and based on what we've seen from Arch Manning, I don't know how you lay big number in the swamp. So I got a really good number in this one. I'm on Florida at 7.5. So that number's gone. What's it at now? It's at 5.5. Wow, Pinnacle's got it down at 4.5. It's getting into the range where, like, I don't think I would play it at under a touchdown, but I do think this is a field goal game. So my pick for the game is still Florida, but I wouldn't bet it now. I got it at 7.5. Boise State, Notre Dame. This one got as high as 3 touchdowns. Then it looks like Boise got hit, but then they raised them to 20K, and it looks like Notre Dame got hit at 20.5. So the market's opinion of Notre Dame completely changed week to week. Boise State, Notre Dame, and this roller coaster, the market's opinion of Notre Dame, man, this has been quite the roller coaster. So last week, we saw nothing but sharp money on the Arkansas side. The number got bought all the way down to 3.5 at times. No one could trust this Notre Dame defense. Now they play a good game against Arkansas, and the defense didn't even play that well. They're laying 3 touchdowns against Boise. So I guess everyone's concerned about the Notre Dame's defense. That's completely gone. We're ignoring the fact that Notre Dame hasn't played good defense this year at all. And I was on Notre Dame last week. I had Notre Dame minus 3.5. So I'm not a Notre Dame hater or anything. It just seems like the market kind of swung completely the other way. They're 100th in success rate, 104th in PPA so far this year. And the Boise offense, we all remember the opener on the road at Raymond James. They lose to South Florida. We all watched it. It was a standalone game. But remember, it's not that Boise's offense couldn't do anything in that game. It's because they kept shooting themselves in the foot. They fumbled in South Florida territory, I think. I think they had 3 turnover on downs in South Florida territory in that game. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I mean, the offense was moving the ball on the road against South Florida. It wasn't that. I mean, and since that game, by the way, Boise State's offense looks excellent. 49 points per game, 45% success rate. Now, they haven't played anybody. They played Eastern Washington, Air Force, whose defense seems to be terrible, and App State. So, okay, maybe you don't respect the opponents they've played since that South Florida game, but opening game of the season on the road at Raymond James against a South Florida defense that's definitely improved this year. I think this Boise State's offense is going to be explosive still this season. Now, Maddox Madsen, he's playing, as far as I know. He got banged up in the Air Force game. He ended up finishing the game, and from what I'm reading, he's 100% good to go. So I'll just say if he's not going to play, and that's part of the reason for this huge number, they're doing an excellent job of hiding it, because from what I could read, he's definitely going to play. And he's looked great, by the way. Again, not against the strongest competition, but in the last 3 games since that South Florida game, Maddox Madsen looks excellent, looking like the preseason Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year that he was. I think Boise State's going to move the ball in this game. I mean, Notre Dame's defense, I thought everyone was on board that this Notre Dame defense hasn't looked good. And then they blow out Arkansas, and seems like everyone has forgotten about these concerns. And by the way, in that Arkansas game, 46.8% success rate. They allowed over 6 yards per play. Arkansas was moving the ball. So, I don't know. The concerns about the Notre Dame defense seem to have just disappeared. Now, maybe Leonard Moore returning is a big part of this. If you don't know who Leonard Moore is, that's Notre Dame's corner. He's one of the best corners in the country. I actually think he was a preseason All-American. He's been hurt. So maybe Notre Dame getting their superstar cornerback, maybe that's part of it. But I have concerns. Getting one cornerback doesn't erase everything we've seen from Notre Dame's defense so far this year. So I think Boise State's going to move the ball. I do. I think they're going to score points in this game. On the other side of the ball, though, this is where, I mean, Notre Dame looks excellent. This looks like one of the best offenses in the country. They're 32nd in success rate, 17th in PPA. Boise State's defense has played pretty well, but they haven't seen anything like this, and they're going on the road to South Bend. This is going to be tough for Boise to make stops in this game. Now, the pass rush has been good. They're actually 3rd in the country in pressure rate, 48.8% pressure rate so far for Boise. But again, they haven't seen an offensive line like Notre Dame. And honestly, hats off to CJ Carr. He's done an excellent job handling pressure. He's got one of the highest passer QB ratings in the country under pressure so far this year. So CJ Carr's truly been great. He had a little bit of a shaky start in the opener at Hard Rock against Miami, but honestly, he wasn't even bad in that game. And ever since then, he's been excellent. And it's not like he hasn't seen anybody. I mean, they played 2 SEC teams in Purdue, 3 Power 4 opponents, and his numbers look great. So I believe fully in this Notre Dame offense. I believe in CJ Carr. It's just the Notre Dame defense that I'm pumping the brakes on a little bit. Let's not forget that last year, Boise State went on the road and played one of these powerhouse opponents. They went on the road to Eugene. They almost won the game. Final score was 37-34. Now, obviously, they had Genty last year, but with the exception of Ashton Genty, pretty much the rest of the Boise State team is back. This is a very good team. I can't believe this is at 20.5. I think that's way too much. I would probably make this a 14, maybe even 13.5. So, yeah, it's Boise for me, plus 20.5. Michigan State, Nebraska, this one's been bouncing around. Got as high as 12.5, then down to 11.5. They raised limits to 20K, and it looks like Nebraska got hit at the minus 11.5. It's up to 13 at the time of recording. Michigan State, Nebraska, and the first talking point in this one is the wind. It's supposed to be a crazy windy day in Lincoln. We're talking 23-mile-an-hour winds. That's a lot. Throwing the ball in that type of wind could be challenging. So based on the play selection, you would think, hey, that favors Michigan State. They've run the ball a lot more frequently than Nebraska has so far this year. The problem is they're not very good at it. They're 79th in success rate per rush, 110th in PPA. I mean, that being said, Nebraska had this elite run defense in 2024. Remember, most of the starters from last year's defensive front are gone. So Nebraska's actually struggled against the run this year. We'll get into it in a second. So, I mean, is Michigan State able to run the ball on the road in Lincoln? I'd say probably not, but Nebraska has struggled to stop the run. So if you like Michigan State to run the ball, I can't necessarily say I agree with you. And, hey, this Michigan State team is coming off a very strong offensive game. They kind of came from behind there a little bit at the end, sort of like a backdoor cover, but and also it was against USC. USC doesn't have the most elite defense, but we've seen these Big Ten offenses struggle when they fly out to the West Coast. We've seen the cross-country Big Ten trips. The traveling team has struggled the last couple years. So for Michigan State to fly out to the West Coast, score 21 points, average 6.17 yards per play, even though USC doesn't have the best defense in the world, this is a solid data point for Michigan State. There is some bad news, though. They lost their left tackle in the game. Stanton Ramiel got injured, and he will not play against Nebraska. And this is a Michigan State offense that actually lost one of their guards, I believe, the week before or 2 weeks before. So Michigan State is now missing 2 starters on the offensive line. You definitely don't like to see that. It's tough to visualize Michigan State going on the road to Lincoln, missing 2 starters on the offensive line, and running the ball on the Huskers. But, I mean, like I said, in Nebraska's 2 Power 4 games, the Cincinnati game in the opener, and then 2 weeks ago against Michigan, they got run all over. They're allowing 8.2 yards per carry, 246 rushing yards per game in those 2. Now, Michigan State is not Cincinnati and Michigan, but I don't know. I don't believe in the Nebraska run defense either. Coming off a bye, maybe they come out with a strong performance, but it's tough to make a prediction on that side of the ball with the wind, and can Michigan State run it? It's tough. I personally think Nebraska coming off the bye week is going to look a lot better defensively. But if you like Michigan State to move the ball, I can't necessarily disagree with you. Now, on the other side of the ball, this should be a great matchup for Dylan Raiola, and I'm saying it should. If it wasn't for the wind, and I mean, how much of a factor is this wind going to be? Is it just the report blowing things out of proportion? We'll have to wait and see. But if it wasn't for the wind, this should be a very good matchup for Dylan Raiola to put together a great stat line. Nebraska's offense has been good so far this year, although they racked up some stats against bad opponents. But Michigan State has really struggled to defend the pass. But Raiola, even against Michigan, he had himself a decent stat line. His problem was the Michigan pass rush. He was under a lot of pressure. Some of that was on him, by the way. Definitely has a tendency to hold on to the football. And there were several plays where he just held on to the football way too long against Michigan. But, I mean, Michigan State's pass rush is not even comparable to Michigan. So, like I said, if it wasn't for the wind, this should be a great game for Dylan Raiola to throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Just comes down to how serious do you think the wind is? Do you think maybe we should disregard it? We'll see. The wind and kind of the weather and the injuries to Michigan State's offensive line make this one kind of tough. I personally think coming out of the bye week, Nebraska should dominate this game. Talk to a couple sharp people that really like the under here with the win. So I don't necessarily hate the under, but it'll be Nebraska minus the big number for me, but there's too many moving pieces for me to actually bet it. Texas Tech, Houston. This one got down to 11, but then they raised limits to 20K, and it looks like Texas Tech got hit pretty hard. Actually, not that hard. It's up to, I thought it was 13. We're looking at 12.5 at the time of recording. Texas Tech, Houston. I'm running out of time, so I got to speed this up here. The question in this one is, how real do we think these Houston defensive numbers are? You look at the graphic here, they look elite. 15th in success rate, 15th in PPA. I mean, we got to keep in mind they haven't played anybody. Their two toughest games so far were Colorado and Oregon State, and Colorado had Staub starting in that game. It was a quarterback making his first career start or something like that. So I'm not really impressed with the data points for Houston's defense. Now, they were a strong defense last year. They lost a lot of the pieces, but I don't think it's crazy to think that Houston has a strong defense. I'm just saying these numbers might be a little bit caked. Now, you could say the same thing for Texas Tech's offense, but they kind of proved it on the road at Rice-Eccles. Now, like I said, we do want to give Houston some credit. They played good defensive games against Colorado and Oregon State, but I mean, these were not big-time Big 12 games. I don't think you can compare either of these offenses to Texas Tech. We know this Texas Tech offense is powerful. Found that out in the Utah game. In their last two, they also played Oregon State and Utah, and they're averaging 39.5 points per game, 7.19 yards per play, success rate over 45%. Quarterback Baron Morton is back and will play in this game, but as we learned in the Utah game, doesn't matter because they got Will Hammond, who could also play. They seem to be too deep at the quarterback position. On the other side of the ball, it's not even a question. I mean, this Houston offense is terrible. They padded their numbers a little bit. They scored a couple touchdowns late, and in a couple of those games, the Rice game in particular. Texas Tech's defensive front, what they did to Utah was very impressive, and Houston's going to struggle to move the ball in this one. It would only be Texas Tech. This team is just routing everybody, so it would only be Texas Tech to win comfortably here. Miami, Florida State, we finally saw some movement in this one. They raised limbs to 20K, and it looks like the Noles got hit. Dropped from 4.5 to 4, sitting in a flat 4 right now. Miami, Florida State, and I got to say, I think the Miami hype might have gotten a little out of control here, laying 4.5 points in Doak Campbell. Let's not forget, I mean, Alabama got smoked in this building just a few weeks ago. Yeah, it was Ty Simpson's first career start, but, I mean, this is Carson Beck's first road game of the season, unless we're thinking the environment isn't going to be as crazy for the opener now that Florida State lost the game. But this is Florida State-Miami. This place is going to be going nuts. This Miami offense does have great numbers on the year. Don't want to take credit away from Miami's offense. They look excellent. But looking back at their body of work, I mean, these two data points, they look so impressive at the time. Florida's gone through it. And Notre Dame's defense, we saw Purdue piecing up Notre Dame's defense. Notre Dame's defense is having all kinds of problems this year. So looking back at these two data points, at first we're like, oh, Miami, strong offensive games against Notre Dame and Florida. Now I'm looking back like 4.8 yards per play against Notre Dame and Florida. It's not even that great. Now Florida's defense is good, but again, this is their first road game, and I'm not quick to pull the trigger on Miami just lighting Florida State up on the road here. I think Florida State can play a good defensive game. And on the other side of the ball, I mean, Florida State lost that game against Virginia on Friday night, which was awesome. I had Virginia, but they were running the ball easily in that game. And again, when we're talking about Miami's body of work, you look back at the data points, Notre Dame's rushing attack took a couple weeks to get going there. It looks like they're starting to run the ball now, but there was a couple week adjustment period to adjust to operating the offense without Riley Leonard there. Also, Florida, they can't move the ball on anybody. So how sold are we on Miami's defense? I just think 4.5 is crazy. This should be a flat 3. So I'm going to be betting Florida State in this one. I didn't bet it yet, but I think Florida State's alive, and I think this game comes down to the last possession. Give me the Noles. Thanks for watching. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to get to any more. As always, we'll go through them all on the live show, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be live for 2 hours all the way up to kickoff. So if you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. Yeah, let's have a good week 6. Remember to bet responsibly. See you guys in the morning.